Is this my one?
Yes.
That's not my
All right,
fault.
good evening. We will call the July 20th, 2022 special meeting of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority to order. Any staff additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, not an addition, but I would like to have a change in order. For the presentations, we would like to request that Your ER Solution LLC be done first. And this is due to a change in presenters. So we would ask for a change in order.
Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Recording in progress.
Carries.
Are you gonna run this or am I running it?
Your speakers or crank your volume way down.
Where's your-
No. Public comments, Ms. Lindbergh.
Good evening, board members. It's time for the Lakeshore Hospital Authority to be dissolved. As you know, it can only be done by a special act of the legislature, which created this authority many years ago. As a taxpayer, I have no input as to who sits on this board. He's appointed by the governor. I have no ability to vote any of you guys out. I pay taxes and have no control over how this board spends tax dollars. This authority has used its useful purpose. It served, it needs to be gone. This board needs to make a resolution and present it to the county commission to approve and have it placed on the ballot for the general election in November. Let the taxpayers and make a decision if they want this board to continue. The monies that are here could be placed in an indigent care trust fund until the funds are exhausted. Let the voters decide if they wish this board to continue. And refreshing memory, if the new board members, or all of them, were aware back in the 80s, the reason the authority stopped operating the hospital was they were going to have to increase the millage. And these board members or trustees at that time did not want to further burden the taxpayers. And as you know, the building has used its useful life. And it would only make sense for this board to make a resolution, present it to the county commissioners, let them approve it and put it on the ballot, and let the taxpayers make a decision if they want this board to continue. Thank you.
Just a reminder, we did vote at the last meeting to set the maximum millage rate that we can possibly levy this year at 0.0001.
Correct. One 10,000ths of a mil.
10,000ths of a mil in year 3. Make that reminder. Dr. Thompson, did you want to speak now or?
After the presentation, could I do it that way?
Sure. Is it true that you're being reappointed to the board?
You got a PO box here. It should work.
I would be willing to consider it.
Have any other comments? Anybody online would like to comment? Here none, we'll move on to new business. Purpose of this special meeting includes but is not limited to hearing proposals from parties interested in utilizing all or part of Lakeshore Hospital campus, to receive additional information pertaining to proposals previously heard, and to discuss the feasibility of raising the Lakeshore Hospital building. We will go on to the presentations from Your ER Solutions LLC. Bill, would you like to introduce?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce Miss Dr. Molly White. Most of you have probably been familiar with her husband, Michael, and since the very beginning, we've been having conversations about their vision and what they may could do with part of the campus. And I would also like to tell the board that, it was with great sacrifice that we got one of the Whites here tonight. The 20th was not a good date for the Whites for a period of time, but they felt like it was important enough to come where you could hear their vision, what they would like to see for this campus, what they think they might could do. And I'm greatly appreciative of that. And I have told Dr. White that they're not here without some sacrifice tonight, and that's greatly appreciated. So having said that, Dr. Molly White.
Thank you, but we wouldn't have missed it, so thank you. I'm Dr. Molly White. I'm originally from Madison, Florida, so I am a cowboy. I well, a cowboy. Yes. Michael can't be here because he's working clinically, so I apologize. This is his brainchild, and I've been working with him to put it together, but I'll do the best I can do. So stop me if you have any questions. I have been in this area for over 20 years. Like I said, I went to Madison High School. Then I went to UF and did my residency at UF and went on to teach at UF. So in fact, I told you I taught Dr. Miguel Tepedino, and I think I did a really good job. I actually did some rotations at Lakeshore when I was a resident back in 2001. I'm aging myself. In 2003, I began working at Lakeshore and worked off and on clinically there and bounced between there, Alachua General, and Shan Stark and Shan's Live Oak. My mother ran the Shan Stark Hospital and worked with Rhonda Gerard for 20 plus years there. She's actually a very good friend of mine. I met Michael when he began working at Lakeshore in 2007. We got married and now we have 4 kids. So life is a little busy, but fun. I'd like to present to you our plan and let you know that we are supported by many local physicians. And in fact, I got several phone calls today in support from these physicians. What we're looking to do is to fill the void in the community from Lakeshore closing. We'd like to have a place for the authority board patients to receive convenient care, local care, so they don't have to leave the county. Unfortunately, for a lot of them, it is very difficult to have transportation, even to go across town to the other facility. Our goal is to reduce hospital admissions and costs, the authority board. What we'd like to do is provide ER level care in an urgent care setting. We'd like to make it as convenient for the patients as possible and keep them local, as I mentioned above, and to reduce the hospital admissions. We'd like to have 95% of our patients not be hospitalized. That is our plan. And how are we going to do that? Essentially, we're going to have a freestanding ER in an urgent care setting, as I said. We'd like to have bedside nursing, techs to perform x-rays and CTs in-house, as well as in-house blood work. We'd like to administer IV fluids, IV antibiotics, and other medications there. Hours of operation. So we'd like to be open for 12 hours on the weekdays and do half days on the weekends. Holidays would be determined by the community need and volume. We'd like to focus on the authority board patients, but we will accept other patients. The space we'd like to use would be the PT building. We'd like to use that for multi-purposes and a 2-story office building for patient encounters. We'd like to have CT scans, C-arm, DEXA, ultrasound, and as I said above, the ability to do IV antibiotics, IV medications. A lot of patients are admitted just for IV antibiotics and IV fluids. A lot of times we can treat them, they get once a day dosing. We could treat them one day, have them return the next day and give them IV dosing without having to pay for overnight hospital stay. We'd like to do splinting, casting, suturing, and sedation if needed for procedures. The way we'd like to do that is we'd like to have boarded physicians with ER experience for many years on site, seeing the patients, as well as nurse practitioners and PAs that also have ER experience. We'll also need additional staff such as ER experienced RNs, LPNs, paramedics, and radiology techs. And if I were hearing this proposal tonight, I'd want to ask, there's questions I would ask, such as what makes you different than an urgent care or company care model? And most of our services that we will be providing cannot be done outside of a hospital. And like I said, we'd like to keep 95% of those patients the best we can out of the hospital. What about primary care? We do not want to compete with the local primary care physicians. Instead, we'd like to partner with them to provide services that are not available in their offices. And if a patient needs primary care, we'd like to work with those local practices to refer to the ones that are accepting new patients and make the appropriate referral that's needed. As far as extended hours, if you prefer extended hours, we have the ability to rapidly expand our hours if there is a community need. I've been in this community, like I said, for approximately 20 years. I know many of the physicians here in town and many in Gainesville have worked in that area as well. And whatever needs we need to fulfill as far as referrals and getting patients in. There's a lot of times you have to work behind the scenes to get patients in, especially that don't have good funding. And there's a lot of ways you have to work around, such as after hours orthopedic clinics, places like that, especially if there's a kid, for example, with a fracture that we can't handle, a supracondylar fracture, et cetera. We can stabilize that patient, but those families don't know how. They'll make phone calls and call back 2 weeks later in that splint and say, we didn't know how to get in. But we will be able to provide, because we'll have more time with these patients than what we were before. We'll be able to have time to make those extra phone calls and help those patients get what they need. And learn, I hate to say work the system, but learn how to get in the system. Medical system is challenging. I'm sure many of you have experienced that before. We want to provide that for the patient. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
We have previously, through the ER here, had a great number of patients from other counties,
Mhm.
and they don't qualify for our program. And many of them are indigent also.
Well, we'll be happy to work with them. We were going to try to we would like to accept Medicaid and other insurances and work with those patients. We'd like to have the authority board working with us to sign up the patients as needed that would qualify for authority board, but we would be accepting other patients.
Okay.
I'm the accountant. Have you developed your business plan and?
Michael has that. I'm sorry, he's not here. I apologize.
Okay,
Has all the
is a
numbers on
component of it contribution from the authority?
Well, what we'd like is a quality space that's operable and functioning, and we may need help getting started. We do know that there is equipment that is not being utilized at Lakeshore. If possible, we would like to use some of that equipment if possible, such as the x-ray equipment, even down to otoscopes and whatever's left that if it's not going to be used or sold by the authority board, we would like to possibly use that. So we would need some startup costs with that.
All of that sounds reasonable. Have you, are you counting your business plan probably seeing the Lakeshore qualified patients for a set fee
Yes.
as opposed to a subsidy?
Yes, we'd rather do it as a fee first as patients see.
Okay. And you have a plan that Dr. White can
Yes,
provide
yes.
us to look at?
Yes.
Ask
And
questions about?
what was I gonna say? I mean, we may have some startup costs, but I don't want to, we're not trying to go in and completely redo that building, and we're not looking for a handout. We want to actually work with you guys to be paid per patient.
If we were to get the building, we're gonna do the build out to make it operable for,
Operable and functioning. We're not,
to the PT building and the 2-story, think you could utilize both.
I think we could. Our hope is to have several areas for patients.
Do you have a plan, just like how that would work? I mean, my mind, I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, I'm not against it by any means, I'm just trying to figure out, would part of it be?
Well, we would need one part, we would need to make for a radiology space, so we need an area for a CT scanner, X-ray, hopefully the C-arm for foreign bodies, et cetera, the DEXA scanner. We need an area for patient care for IV fluids, IV medications. Sometimes, for example, patients were having to try to Live Oak to get the monoclonal antibody infusions. They were, some places had them, but very few. We like, if that, something like that occurs again, we'd like to be able to provide that for longer care and for IV antibiotics. Some IV antibiotics take a couple of hours to receive. So we'd like to have special places for that. And then have more private areas for the patients that are being seen. So they have all sitting in one great room like this, all looking at each other. So.
You said that you want to start off 12 hours weekdays, half days on the weekends, but you're willing to expand even possibly to 24 hours if the business calls for that.
Well, I haven't thought about 24 hours, but we could. I mean, with the staffing, with the interest we've had from staffing, we could. But I hadn't.
So it's something you'd be open to.
Yes.
At least.
I mean, I was thinking more 16 hours, but 24 hours. We have to see our volume
Sure.
and demand, but. Yes.
Okay, would you be interested in the emergency room? Because if you're talking radiology services, you've already got a couple of machines in there.
Mhm.
The walls are already lead lined, which they have to be.
Yes,
know.
we hadn't, we thought that there would be too much cost up front to use that building, so that's why we were thinking of using the PT building. We're trying to keep the cost down, but that is an idea. We could definitely look at that.
I mean, those are expenses that people outside of radiation stuff don't think about.
Right.
And that is an extensive cost.
Is it?
But theoretically, okay, could you, with some working around the emergency room and then say one, maybe the building across the street?
Okay, I do want to defer to Michael on that. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
To be here. I'm sorry about that. I don't want to answer him. We've bantered that around, but we would certainly be open to looking at that. We didn't think about the red line cost, but he may have, but I haven't thought about that. This is his brainchild, so I'm sorry you're stuck with me.
It makes you feel
We
better.
like you better.
I don't think the, from my limited experience, if it was just, I remember you said something about a C-arm in there. I put them in before where you don't need lead lining. Actually went through that round and round with the code. You don't need lead lining with the
But you
C-arm.
do for the rest of the equipment.
Yes, yeah, you do for the rest.
Mr. Chairman, what we as staff would like to get out of this presentation is the authority to do exactly what we did with Hope Bridges, and that is to get permission to sit down and start working out the particulars of what this program, this business model, this lease would look like, where we can bring those details back. We've been impressed with what the Whites have been proposing for some time. I think you probably share that. There's a lot of the need of the community that I've heard in both Molly and Michael, with conversations with Molly and Michael. So what we are seeking here is a authorization from the authority to sit down with the Whites, and we can look at the absolute best location for what they want to do, how that would work, what the terms of that may be, look at their business model and the specifics of what they may need from the authority, that type of thing. But we can't do that until we get permission from you. So that is where we're at from a staff perspective. That's what we're looking to get out of tonight's presentation.
Doctor, thank you for being here. Excellent proposal, but help me with some of the lingo that I made a note of here, where
Okay.
you had mentioned that 4 hours may be looked at as the community needs. Help me with that. What would determine
So
that?
is, because we have to pay providers that are not.
Yes, ma'am.
We have to be able to pay the providers. So if we have enough volume that we could justify the providers, we could certainly do that.
Okay, and you had mentioned something, and just, I think I picked up where you had said 16 hours, but not 24. Is that,
Well, that was just me thinking off the top of my head.
but I like that thought too.
I mean, we would have to start, because I've seen this model and I've worked in a model like this before. And the first 2 years, he saw very few patients daily. And it will be Michael and I working every day for the first bit, because we won't be able to pay staff to be honest with you, if we don't have the right volume. So we're
Okay.
gonna be working quite a bit. But it took him a good 2 years to build that program. And then he developed, at one point, he was seeing 40 to 50 patients a day. But that's in a, it's in a larger city than here. And I don't know that would, if we'd be able to do that, but it would probably take us a good 2 years, because we have to work with the other clinicians, develop that. We've actually talked about maybe developing a place for the county. And I have understood that many people have to go out of town for workman's comp. That's something I've done a lot of work with, and I would be very comfortable having workman's comp work through this facility, doing the pre-employment physicals. I mean, our goal, of course, is going to be with the special patients, there with the authority board, get them back to work. And if they want to come in and get a pre-employment physical, school physical, these things cost money for people if they're trying to go back to work. We work with Catholic Charities, and we know just for some people to go in and get razors is a big deal for patients. So we're going to try to work with them, because their ability to drive down to Gainesville, it's not, they can't even drive down to deliver a baby, so much less drive down to Gainesville for pre-employment physical. These are things we would like to be able to provide at this facility. But when they come in and do, other people come in for this, I would like them to see that they would get compassionate, efficient care, and then maybe bring their child when their child is sick and let me see the child and build our practice that way.
Okay. And then the other term that you used, I think you had said that what I wrote was an emergency room in an urgent care
So
setting.
now we
What
legally
does that
cannot say-
mean?
We legally cannot say that we are an emergency room unless
Correct.
we are open greater than 16 hours.
Okay.
Okay, that's legally. So we would be in urgent care. But a lot of these urgent cares, because as I worked in the ER for the last 20, I'm aging myself, but 19 years. We have seen what urgent care send in, and they send in simple lacerations that should have been cared for there. They say, oh, we can't sew it up, it's too complicated. And I'm thinking it was complicated, but but that's why you need experience from someone from the urgent. I hope I'm not stepping on that, but there's certain things that we can do.
I agree with you.
But there's certain things that we can do. What are the other things? IV antibiotics. A lot of times they'll send a patient over with a pneumonia and say, well, they need to be admitted. Well, no, they really don't. Or if they have a cellulitis, I can do a dose of Rocephin and have them return and recheck them if they need to be. 95% of these patients do not need to be kept overnight in the hospital. And a lot of patients, the Medicare patients, don't realize that they're kept in an observation. They have an exorbitant fee when they're admitted to the hospital. If it doesn't roll over to an admission, they have to pay for all their own medications, et cetera. They're very upset after that 24 hours. If it's just an observation, there's a lot of things that we could do. We could keep them there for serial troponins and things like that. That would be our goal for the community.
Okay. Appreciate it.
I know you said that you weren't really going after the primary care business. If you saw a need and call for that, is that something you would consider branching into, or are you really focusing? The reason I ask that is part of our program is also for primary care through different clinics. I don't know if that's something that you all would be interested in looking at expanding into in the future.
It's certainly look into that. I want to be very careful not to.
Yeah, I don't want you to
because I'm
commit
very
to
good
it.
friends with a lot of the primary cares here in town. I know there's a big need, and I know we have wonderful physicians that are looking at retirement, and I don't know what this community is gonna do when they retire. I'm very concerned about that, because there's some physicians that have very large practices that are gonna be retiring, unfortunately. But yes, we could definitely look into that. But again, I need to be careful.
I'm not asking you to commit to it, but.
No, it's okay. I need to be careful.
Yeah, sure.
Our patients are allowed to pick their primary care. And we were very much aware that in the emergency room, when the hospital was open, a lot of people use that for their primary care. So, it's their choice what they want to do, so.
Right. Also, I'm family medicine trained. I feel comfortable with primary care, but hypertension meds, et cetera. However, if they have an established primary care, we will certainly try to keep them with that patient. I mean, with their primary care physician, but yes, we can. Sometimes we have a lot of patients that would they come in and say, look, I can't afford a doctor. I need hypertension meds, and I'm certainly gonna help them out and run 30-day supply of that, and ask them to come back and get rechecks for their blood pressure, and they're gonna need their B&P checked in, et cetera. So we're certainly gonna be there for the patients and if they need to come back.
I would like to say what she's proposing, I have not heard of in probably 50 years. I think it sounds excellent. I really do.
I did work in this model in another city, and I loved it.
It's what your parents would have referred to as old-fashioned medicine.
Not corporate medicine.
Questions, comments? Thank you, Dr. White.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it
Thank you
very
for
much.
letting me come.
Dr. Thompson did request to speak, so.
I'm Dr. Mark Thompson. I've been a member of the Authority Board for a number of years. I've been in this community as an oncologist since 2006. I've known Mike and Molly for Dr. White's for a number of years. And I just want to be here. She said a lot of community physicians are supporting them, and we are. For instance, I got a call today from a couple of physicians saying, hey, did you know, weren't you on the board? And I said, yes. You know that Molly or Mike is going to be presenting a proposal? And I said, no. And they said, well, get over there and support it. So it was an easy thing to do, because we do that. As physicians, when we knew Mike and Molly was in the ER, we had a great deal of confidence that our patients were going to be very well cared for. We went through a horrendous pandemic in this country and in this community. And certainly nobody does this as an individual. Lake City Medical Center did a wonderful job, and they're building a huge expansion project. This is not going to be an issue with that at all. But if you look at the tip of the spear of people who led this community through an ugly pandemic, it was Mike and Molly White. And I don't mean this just casually or anything like that. Hospitals provide facilities and beds, and that was all great. And our hospital here did a wonderful job during that pandemic, but patients go to a doctor. And when they go through an emergency room, many times they meet Mike and Molly White through that pandemic. And they got us through this, guys. I'm not joking. They got us through this. So you're getting extremely high quality physicians. You're getting people who are dedicated to our community. You're getting people who fellow physicians like in this community. We trust them. We know that they're not out to compete against anybody. They're out to fill a niche that's going to be needed. Our community is growing. So I want to offer support. I have no idea what the business plan or the business model is. I don't have any information on that. But I just urge you as fellow board members, and I know you will, please do your due diligence. Please listen to the proposals. I think it's needed in this community. They have the support of a number of physicians that have contacted me today. And they're great people. They're great people. They're excellent, high quality, probably two of the best ER docs We're going to this community. That's not saying anything bad about anybody else, but you're getting two of the best. So thank you very much. And Molly and Michael, thank you for everything you've done for our community. Okay, guys, thank you.
Thanks, Doc.
All right, thanks, Doc.
We, multi-specialties, I think,
We've had a change in presenters. They contacted me late yesterday afternoon and indicated that due to an emergency, Lori would not be able to be here. So I have her rescheduled for your regular meeting in August. She will be on that agenda. Needless to say, in your agenda packet is the letter that was submitted when they responded to the RFP. If you're interested in knowing sort of what they're proposing, just to rehash it, they're looking for about 12,000 square feet. They employ around 18 people. They do anything from level 1 to level 4 clinical trials. They're looking to expand from what they have now. Along with that, they're looking for about 20 beds. Their business model is proven. I mean, they're in business now. I think their model has grown and maybe outgrown the physical building that they have. And so they're looking at these facilities as an opportunity to expand. So I think when they present the first meeting in August, that will more or less be what you will hear. You'll hear that message. And then you can ask them more specifics about exactly what they do and how they do it.
expressed a specific interest in specific building.
I think right now the building that they're sort of honing in on is the building I call the Women's Center, the 2-story building facing the lake. But again, you know, I mean, this goes without saying. I mean, part of the art of what we have to do here is to find the right space for the right people to accommodate these needs. It's not as easy as it may seem, because we don't want to do things in a haphazard manner that cause us to have to spend money in order to do renovations that would not otherwise be needed. And yet at the same time, we don't want to lose any of these people as a tenant, you know, for lack of action. So that process has begun. I mean, we've already sat and had a couple of meetings with the Hope Bridges people. We know what they want. And, you know, they've already said they would like to negotiate some first right of refusal for some of these other buildings because they already see what they're wanting to do possibly growing. And all of that has to be considered when we take into account all of these requests. But that's what we're here for, and it's good to have that problem. We just want to try to resolve that as quick as possible. But, you know, our problem has gone from being one extreme to almost being at the other end, a different extreme, which is good in a way, which is really good.
I will say I have personal thoughts and feelings, and from what I hear from people in the community, obviously people want as much medical services as possible. And I agree. I think if we can, whatever we can get on this side of town, would be fantastic. So I'll just say for me myself, presentation we just heard this evening, towards the top of my list on a priority level anyways. It's just me.
Do we need a motion for you to have a sit down
Yes, ma'am. We would like to sit down and, of course, get really to some specifics with Mike and Molly and, come back and say, we're all in agreement that this is the parameters of a plan. And then from there, you can comment, and then from that, we'll try to tweak it and reduce it to writing.
Okay, I make a motion that we have a review. Would it be a review of their business model? Is that what it would be called?
It would be included, but
Just have staff.
Yeah, I think it'd be an evaluation of the proposal.
Okay,
And
then-
you're specifically asking staff to come back with the particulars for you to review.
How do I reword that? I make a motion that we have the staff review the White's proposal. How's that?
That'll work for me.
If you want to add, if you want to add ER Solutions LLC into that, you can.
Okay. Of ER Solutions LLC.
I'll second that.
Motion second, further discussion. All in favor, see what I'll say, aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Just as point of information, it'll be the same appointees that you had for Hope Bridges. That way we kind of know what everybody's doing. It helps us kind of keep things in perspective. If we start changing people, then things are going to get lost in translation. And Molly, I just need you and Michael to maybe give me a calendar of available dates and times. And we'll do all we can to help meet that calendar, okay?
I will work now, but I will definitely, so that's why it was.
I know.
difficult. I apologize, but I will definitely give that to you.
I know. Not only are you working with 4 kids, you gotta.
We homeschool.
Oh.
Go back to school. Michael doesn't want to go back to school either. I do.
So, we'll be ready when you and Michael are ready. Okay.
Mr. Williams, can we put some time limits on that possibly, or not to put a big burden on staff, but
Well, it's not so much on the staff end. I appreciate, again, what they're going through. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm willing to do whatever I've got to do to
Right.
make time. I've got to get this calendar for Mike and Molly to see what's available.
I got you.
And
And then
then,
you're gonna have to get with Mr. Powell, Mr. Coberline.
and there's where the real problems are.
Exactly. And then,
Yeah,
and while we're on the subject with Mr. Coberline, as far as, and I'm glad you're here tonight. And
I come when I want.
are you gonna be available to help do this, or do we need to, as far as Mr. Coberline's contract, which I was not involved in, if he is tied up, consumed with other legal issues, does his contract permit that we go outside and seek additional legal assistance?
I can help you with your question and your answer. The real question here is he's asking is, am I gonna be able to work around this fishing calendar? And to schedule with the lights, and the answer is absolutely.
Great, good. Thank you. I just wanted a commitment. All right, that's good.
Okay.
Next meeting's August 8th.
Hey,
Just throwing that out there.
yeah, and again, we have authority from the chair. We'll schedule special meetings and continue to
Yeah.
schedule special meetings where we don't get called into a 1 month between meeting thing.
Yeah,
No, that's not.
good.
Sorry.
No,
Did you hear?
no update, no progress on the other negotiation.
I didn't hear anything.
He asked me if there was a
Yes.
full moon. between
We
now and
have
Friday.
received some materials. We have received some materials. I have had a couple of conversations as early as today. And I haven't even had time to get that information out, but I will. And I have asked them to give us some dates to have a second meeting,
Okay,
just as I just did. So I'm waiting on those.
thank you, sir.
I didn't hear a second meeting with who?
This would be with Hope Bridges.
Oh,
Thank you, sir.
Mhm. Mr. Chairman, was there any questions that I might could answer about multi-specialty research that you might have?
I think it's a fantastic organization, and I would love to be able to see them grow, and they do a lot of good in our community.
Mhm.
So I want to clarify, I wasn't trying to take anything away by my statement earlier. Love if we could find room for them as well. Just feel like from what I've heard from those in the community, even though some people say we don't represent the community, we only represent the governor, still their tax money, and I personally like to look out for it. So I know that I've heard from people that medical care like that, urgent care is.
I agree.
And listen, I don't really have questions on that. I don't know if everybody else does, that they'll maybe able.
I would suggest if any of the trustees have specific questions about the multi-specialty proposal, if you'll get them to me, I'll get them to them prior to our regular meeting on the 8th. And that way you might get some answers at that meeting before we even sit down with them and talk specifics.
Okay.
Anything else on these proposals before we move on to the discussion on the investments?
Okay. All right, we're going to completely change hats. We're now going to put on a investment hat for the authority. This is a continuation from our last regular meeting. During that meeting, I asked the trustees if you would consider or thought we should consider taking advantage of what's happening in the interest market, particularly in the past few months. You indicated that you would, but there were a few caveats. You wanted to make sure that we give locals an opportunity to quote. And you asked that we try to expedite it where we could do this at this particular special meeting. And of course, by the fact that it's been scheduled, we were successful in doing that. So what we did is we prepared a quote form. We submitted that quote form to all the brokers locally, which would be the Raymond Jameses and the Edward Joneses and et cetera. We also sent them to the banks. We sent them to the banks because some banks do issue treasuries. So everybody that was on our vendor list received an opportunity to quote. From that, we received back 4 quotes related to securities, and then we received back 1 alternate quote, which says, hey, we don't do securities, but here's you a new CD rate if you want it. So I'm only disclosing that, but it was not something we asked for, but it is noted in your packet. So of the 4, the first thing we obviously looked at is if we wanted to buy treasuries, what would you charge us in order to do that? And based solely on the cost, there were 2 proposals that were tied. So then we looked at other factors. Are you going to give us a statement? Are you available locally to service? Those kinds of things. And in those cases, they were both tied. So you have 2 proposals that will be more than glad to place U.S. Treasuries on behalf of the authority that basically are dead even in And I asked Richard about it, and what we decided to do was to get the proposers to acknowledge that they were in compliance with that statute. And so we did receive back confirmation from the proposers that their proposal met the requirements of that law. So I no longer feel like that's an issue. The other thing is that we did not ask, when we asked for the proposals, if their issuance fees would change if we invested less than the full 18 million with them. So by splitting it, there is a chance, though I don't think they will say no. There is a chance one of them might say, well, no, if I can't get it all, I'm going to go up on my rate or whatever. If that should happen, in order not to delay the process anymore, we'll flip a coin, pick one, and move on. But I do think, probably knowing both of those brokers, they will probably agree to that. So we are asking authority permission to place $18 million in US Treasuries. We're asking permission to retire early with penalty the certificate of deposits we currently have. And we're going to place those treasuries in the amount of $9 million with each broker, with the two lowest cost proposals received. And I'll defer to Dick if he has a comment, but I think I've covered it, and that would be staff request.
And all I'll say is that in the last year, using the most competitive CD rates available, you made about 100,000, and potentially, well, and it's going to be absolute. The treasuries today were 3.2%. That you should and you will earn about 575,000 just with this move. And once you purchase them, you absolutely, if you hold them for the 2 years and the 3 years, you'll absolutely earn that amount of interest. And it's backed, and you say, is it as good as CDs? Well, the CDs are backed by the government, but these are issued by the government, and we're just jumping in with the Chinese. So.
Well, there you go.
Well, that's a little bit TMI, isn't it?
So my only concern is we're talking about possibly raising the building, we're talking about possibly renovating some buildings. I'm just saying, so are we gonna have enough?
Okay, so the nominations are in $1,000. They're actively traded, so you can, if you need to cash in $1 million, you can, and it'll be at the prevailing rates at that time, depending on what you have. We are holding out, what, $3 million?
$3 million. Plus, they're going to rake the interest off of these and put them into the checking accounts as it's earned
Going right in.
for operating expenses.
So you have liquidity, and it's in a way it's horrible, but these same securities a year ago when CDs were 0.4, these were 1/4%, and now they're 3.2. It's just the time, and I won't say you can't lose. Yeah.
Is there a penalty in cashing in those early?
Okay, so what happens? You bought them at 3.2. Okay, so if when you decide to cash them in, if the prevailing rate is 4.2, then it'll be adjusted. So your security isn't worth as much to somebody. So it would have a little adjustment in it. Now, if the rates were 2.2, then you'd cash it in at a premium. And so there's not a penalty, but it's the market value based on the rate at the time you cash it in. And again, if rates went up 6%, then you could cash them in and buy some 6% ones. And so it is, you know, interest is paid. You're buying one for 2 years, and you might buy a 2-year one that's only a year and a half, and it's all adjusted, you know, because they're actively traded. Interest is paid twice a year, and it's going to go to your checking accounts to fund the budget. Their denominations of $1,000, and so and which is why we wanted a brokerage statement, because then you can call the broker and say we need $500,000, and they can do it, and it'll be at that same $1.50 per thousand, which isn't very much, and so but I think it's very worthwhile when you know you're going to get 3% for 2 years and 3 years. It'll fund your budget basically, and you're not waiting to see what rates are going to happen or anything. And again, you know, 2 years goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And the closer it is to maturity, the less, you can call it a penalty, but the less adjustment that would happen if rates were a lot higher. So
These are treasury bonds, not bills.
okay, it's interestingly, it's called a treasury bill if it's a year or less.
Okay,
These are treasury notes, which go to 2 to 5 years.
okay,
And then bonds start at, I think, 10.
10, right.
Go to 30. And interestingly, for whatever reason, the 2 years and the 3 years have the highest yields right now of all of them. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion that we permit staff to go ahead and retire the current CDs that we have. You set a figure, I think you said of 17 million, 18 million. And invest with the 2 lowest bidders that we have been given here. And did you need to have the figure in there as far as the retirement rate on the CDs too, Counselor? Or not, motion?
No, it's going to be inferred. It's required.
As soon as possible.
The motion,
Second.
the discussion. Favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I would like to add, not in part of the motion, I'd just like to thank Mr. Williams and Mr. Powell for being proactive on that.
All we got, again, just to recap, we have continuing conversation with the Hope Bridges people on the VA transitional housing.
Some kind of report by August 8th.
I hope that's the goal. I hope that we can come back and give a report. Hopefully it'll be positive, report. As soon as I hear back from Dr. White and Dr. White about a schedule, we'll get those scheduled where we can sit down and begin that. You'll have Lori coming from multi-specialty at your next meeting. Again, if you have any questions you might want her to answer, get them to her in advance. I'm sure she'd be glad to cover those. And we really need to start thinking about space allocation, because that's what this is all coming down to.
Last meeting, you mentioned that you started getting a lot of proposals for raising the building.
Yeah, we have, well, we identified vendors, 20-something vendors. We're continuing to get the number because that's what you asked. But what we're doing is we're going to have a mandatory pre-bid. And at the mandatory pre-bid, rather than me telling them what they need to know, I'm going to ask them what they need to know from us in order to submit a bid.
August 8th is the next regular meeting. We don't have a special meeting scheduled at this point.
No, and to get one scheduled with advertising, we got so close to the August 8th that it was almost.
We do have one for September 26th. Right?
We do
The budget.
budget.
Yeah, and you want to have the budget workshop on August 8th. Separate.
Oh, at the regular meeting, I think we've already scheduled it.
Yeah. Because see, the budget will kind of, hopefully there'll be an understanding, because the budget will hopefully reduce the current maintenance thing and have rent and just from treasuries and provide things like that. So it'll be a different budget this year.
Well, you know, Dick wasn't here, but I'd already advised the trustees, we don't have a crystal ball. So we're going to prepare a budget based on what we know, and then if the conditions change, we'll just have to amend the budget to meet the condition.
Board member comments? Okay.
Have we heard any more about the dental that we talked about?
I spoke last week with the Public Health Unit Director, Tom, and we didn't specifically talk about the dental, Miss Lori, but I told him not to give up on me, that we were coming, that we were trying to get some of this other stuff out of the way. Just, you know, hold on. We're still interested. I still want to talk to you about it. But that's as far as that's got.
Because I think that if we do decide to go with ER Solutions, that would be a good compliment to them. Because some of the people that come in urgent care and ER facilities actually have teeth problems.
Well, actually, I don't remember if it was Molly or if it was Michael, but in one of the conversations, we were asked about the medical assistance program and what it did for dental, because they know from experience working in these clinical settings, a lot of times the patient's problem is purely
With their
dental.
teeth, yeah.
And they don't do dental, so where do you go? What do you do?
Kennedy?
None, I think very productive meeting tonight. Appreciate it. I think I understand the difference between urgent care and emergency room care. Thank- And treasury notes and bills and bonds. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm not an accountant.
Just to echo what Mr. Kennedy said, thanking Dale for looking out for the taxpayers. A few weeks ago, when I caught him on the phone, he was down in West Palm. He had gathered all his financial advisors for a conference. And I was hoping that he would bring back some of his personal financial advice that he was.
But I can't give it away. I have to sell it.
it.
I have to sell it. I can't just give it away.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale.
Yeah, sure.
I want to say, I think that Mr. Coberline's jacket is very nice.
Really is a sharp.
For the camera.
Yeah. it's very sharp.
I'm glad he's feeling better
Go
too.
Gators.
Well, adjourn. I was told that I do need a motion for adjournment, so I'm sorry that I have been breaking the rules lately.
You
I
did?
try my best to be a rule follower. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
In good conscience, I don't think I can give that motion.
Any plans tonight?
I think you can.
I thought so too, but I was told by legal
If the
team.
agenda is complete, I thought.
Yeah, what you get to,
Well,
Robert.
I guess because we didn't hear from the. Special meeting, the agenda's not complete, so. Can I please have-
You didn't hear this from me.
I
huh?
thought law said.
I just need a motion for adjournment. That's really all. I don't care.
Let's leave, please.
Whoever makes it, I'll second.
I reversed my original